Hi, I'm Darshata Gamage. I'm an activist and a social worker, and I work in the areas of digital media literacy, freedom of expression, and youth development.
So Darshata, the parliamentary elections are coming very soon. And at this point, what role do you think the debate around the abolition of the executive presidency will play in shaping these upcoming parliamentary elections?
The debate about abolishing executive presidency has always been one of the highly contested topics. And even during the presidential elections, we saw main candidates pledging to abolish executive presidency. However, what we are seeing is not a lot of people are not really debating about it out there, and I think main reason is that the priority has been the economy for this election, and at the same time a lot of people have also given up on it because there has been multiple false promises that have been made by presidents and candidates before. So a lot of people don't really debate on it, but I think since candidates and even the current presidents pledged to abolish the executive presidency, it can have some relevance, but it may not be a key priority.
Hi, my name is Pumali Ranasinghe. I am a researcher and a lawyer working in Sri Lanka. The debate around the abolition of the executive presidency has been there for a long time. Even during the past presidential elections, we saw various groups, activists voicing these concerns, following a concrete demand for this, especially after the Aragalaya and the call for system change. Right now, we are heading towards a parliamentary election in the upcoming days. And one of the key things I think that needs to be center stage is also this call for the abolition of the executive presidency. It's important that the elected leaders who have promised to deliver this specific demand are kept accountable for that demand, because time and time again in Sri Lanka we have seen various political leaders who come to power claiming that they would abolish the executive presidency, continues the same cycle of impunity and continues this extremely problematic, almost cancerous establishment within our body politic, which is antithetical to democracy and ensures that the cycle continues. So this needs to be stopped, and I think a big part of that debate is also people understanding and continuing to demand that these specific calls are kept intact in the political discourse, especially holding these different parties accountable for what they have promised.
So Darshata, how do you believe the removal of executive presidency could impact the balance of power and governance in Sri Lanka?
So in governance, we talk about the three pillars of the executive, legislature, and the judiciary. The introduction of the executive presidency has actually removed the entire checks and balances that we should have in the governance process, and it has actually tilted power towards one particular individual who is holding the executive presidency. And over the years, we have seen numerous instances which this kind of power has failed us, be it the economic side of things, human rights, or even governance in general. And I believe this lack of checks and balances among the three pillars of governance is one of the biggest reasons why we have not been able to progress as a society. And by abolishing executive presidency and introducing a system which can have proper checks and balances between the executive, legislature and the judiciary, I think we are able to bring in a far more accountable and transparent governing process to this country.
I'm Melanie Gunathilaka. I'm a climate and political activist. I think abolishing the executive presidency is one of the crucial aspects in terms of changing this political culture in Sri Lanka. But at the same time, we have to be mindful of the current challenges that Sri Lanka is facing as a country, and especially in relation to debt restructuring negotiations. Some of the decisions that has been made have not been made with transparency. There's very little communication with the public. There's very little knowledge among the public about these debt negotiations, and also the Minister of Finance has refused to share information regarding some of the agreements that Sri Lanka has signed as when we took bilateral debt. So in terms of making these processes more transparent, and also holding the officials and the decision makers who take these decisions into account, is quite important. So I think the path to abolishment of the executive presidency also needs to consider these facts and how Sri Lanka's decisions are being taken. I think Sri Lanka made a massive shift with the results of the presidential elections. Not only that it elected a new president, but it was also a shift from the old ways of politics, or the old hierarchies, the old power structures. I think for me as an activist, what is most important right now, there are two things. One thing is the Sri Lanka's environment and how we are going to preserve and protect our natural resources, making sure that our people, Sri Lankan citizens, have access to their basic needs, and also ensuring the debt negotiations that is currently happening in terms of debt restructuring are happening in a way that is beneficial to Sri Lanka in the long run.
I'm Namini Pandita. I'm a lawyer, and also I'm the founder of Liberal Youth Movement, an organization which focuses on enhancing political literacy and inclusive governance. So there is no point of, even we do reforms, we talk about reforms, we come up with reforms, if the subsequent government is going to change it again and again. So there should be a system that we should not let upcoming governments to change progressive reforms that happened in past. Then how we are going to mark this line? How we are going to draw this line? Which reform is progressive, which reform is not progressive, and a progressive that we should amend? Because we can't make that hard and fast rules like saying reform should not be done to constitution. Because constitution also should be kind of flexible, and it should be a balance between flexibility and also because like if we can't change, or if we can't amend a constitution, we also can't remove its bad sides of it, and also we can't evolve with the current needs of the society. So one such reform is abolishing executive president. Like over decades, like every presidential candidate promised us or the electorate with abolishing executive presidency. So if it is the parliamentary system, it is good, and I am rooting to a parliamentary system, parliamentary governance, because like within a parliamentary governance, the power will be delegated to multiple actors, not just to a single person, and there will be a collaborative governance and inclusive governance. As intelligent citizens of the country, we should first understand a set of values. We should first root for a set of values. As I earlier mentioned, power is a very important concept. So if there is a reform, if there is an amendment, if there is a law which focuses on centralizing power, we should understand that is not for good for the betterment of the citizens of the country. It is good for the leader. It's good for that exact political party or politicians, or for their own benefit. That is one criteria we can identify as a criteria not to support for that kind of reform. That political party can be your favorite political party, that leader can be your favorite politicians, and that is okay. This is not about hurting your feelings, but this is about having a better future for all of us, not just for us, but for even for upcoming generations, because this is our responsibility, because upcoming generation is our responsibility.
So during the current election period, the economy has been one of the key priorities for a lot of people, and it's also because of the crisis that we've had. But it's also important for us to realize that what is the underlying reason for this economic crisis, and our failures in governance and democracy should be understood by the people. And when we are reflecting it, it's also not about just a change of faces that we are looking at, but also electing candidates who can uphold democracy, who are able to really bring in a true representation of the people, as well as kind of bringing more stronger, more transparent and more accountable governance processes to our country. And I think it is the responsibility of us as citizens to make that decision during the elections, and also to hold the representatives for those accountable for those decisions and mandates that they have taken up. And I think it's something that's very important for us to realize and address, not just the symptoms but also the underlying issues for the current state that we are in this country.
With the parliamentary election coming up, what message would you like to convey to the voters about the importance of abolition of executive presidency and its potential impact on the future of Sri Lankan democracy?
I do see momentum, especially among young voters, and I think my message is more towards the young voters who are perhaps voting for the first or the second time, who voted for the first time in the presidential election and are looking forward to the other elections. This has been an election year and it's still not over. And after elections, your democratic role is also not over. So you need to continue to demand, especially from political leaders, to keep to their word, number one. And number two is that to understand that while you are making those demands, you should also make yourself aware of the problems within the Sri Lankan governance system, partially coming up because of the executive presidency, but also because of the larger apathetic political culture that exists in Sri Lanka. And the executive presidency, I think, has survived for so long because of that apathetic political culture. For any voter, I think it's important to first understand what these political entities have promised and continue to demand for them. And most importantly, understand that your role extends beyond elections. And for a strong democracy, it's important to remember that you can't demand for a strong man leader. The emphasis on the strong man leader, because time and time again, we do see different regimes coming into power promising to be a king or promising to be an extremely all-powerful savior that will save the people from atrocities and whatnot. But this is not why we have elections and why we have a democratic system. Democracy functions with multiple stakeholders, different levels of governance systems, and continues to hold these different political leaders accountable and emphasize the role of the citizenry in doing all of this.